The library is home to a wide range of collections, and one of the most important is the Nicholson Collection of whaling logbooks, second largest in the world, just under 800 logbooks documenting over 1,000 voyages, which is about 20% of all the whaling voyages that we know to have existed. These logbooks have been here for, I believe it's about 65 years now, and we've had researchers from all over the country, really all over the world, come in and use them. But obviously that can be difficult for researchers, and especially in a time when people are locked inside. We're really excited that we managed to complete this digitization project a few years ago. So we're able to use these now and provide access all around the world and for projects like this.
I'm Caroline Ummenhofer. I'm an oceanographer and climate scientist at Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. My research focuses on the ocean's role in climate. In particular, how does the ocean affect rainfall, droughts, floods, extreme events? And when you study extreme events, you generally need very long records. It's hard to say something about the 1 in a 100-year flood event or the drought of the century if we have just 20, 30, 50 years of records, which is the case in most places around the world. So when Tim contacted me a few years ago to look at historic documents, in particular whaling ship logbooks that contain weather and climate information, this really was a boon to getting at longer records. So we can get weather and climate information from 200, 250 years ago, which really extends our understanding of wind records in particular back several more centuries than what we currently have.
My name is Timothy Walker. I am a historian in the history department at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. I am a historian of the early modern European world and particularly maritime and colonial history. And I'm also a guest researcher at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution. I've always been very interested in matters of climate and climate change, but I worked in records that usually didn't allow me an opportunity to professionally engage with that kind of material. But I also sailed on large historically rigged vessels, and one of my sailing buddies, a shipmate, was a graduate student at Stanford working in ocean climatology. And he had the idea that we could somehow marry together our skill sets to do a project. And this led then to us looking for a more regionally based ocean climatologist and someone who studied climate in the oceans, and that led us to Caroline Ummenhofer. And we pitched this idea that I had access to and knowledge of many archives from the colonial era, and I lived in New Bedford, which is sort of the center of whaling, and knew very well the records of the New Bedford Whaling Museum and the New Bedford Free Public Library. And I knew that there was a real treasure trove of data locked up in these whaling logbooks that could be exploited for weather data. So within a few minutes of talking to one another, Caroline and I really realized that we were onto something. We had this idea that we should continue, and mining data from the logbooks would be something that would help us to build a large database, a mosaic of weather points that can help us tell us something about weather 200, 300, even 400 years ago.
And these are very valuable records, in particular the whaling ship logbooks, because the whalers went to areas that are far away from the traditional merchant and shipping lanes. So other people had already analyzed or have used weather information from the British East India Company, the Dutch East India Company, or Navy ships, but they all traveled along similar trade and merchant shipping lanes. The whalers went where the whales are, and they are often in very remote areas.
So I can imagine, I think it was about 100 years ago when Paul Nicholson started collecting logbooks, and I have no doubt that he never expected them to be used in this kind of way. He was really putting together a collection of artifacts that he was interested in. And so seeing them now sort of get new life, really excited that FM Global has made it possible for us to make this project happen, and the chance to work with WHOI and with UMass Dartmouth, and specifically Tim and Caroline, is really exciting. It's really been, we've seen how impressive the work they've already done is, and it's really gratifying that we're able to fill in essentially using material that was digitized a few years back, again without this in mind, but knowing that it's being put to good use now.